Please, everyone, find your seats. We're going to start in just a couple minutes. Okay, let's get started. Darren, that includes you. Good morning. Good morning. I am Greg Falls. I am the board chair of the Arizona Town Hall, and I welcome all of you. Look at this crowd, and I understand we have a pretty big crowd online too. So welcome. This is our annual now, I think, celebration of our background report that is produced for every year on the topic that the town hall is going to look at. This year being building Arizona's workforce. And copies of the report are on your tables. They're available for those of you that are online. They're available for download. I think we're pretty proud of it, and we're here to celebrate that report, talk about it, and then move into what will be the next step in our town hall process. I want to thank our sponsors, the Maricopa Community Colleges, big supporter of Arizona Town Hall, and also Rio Salado College for hosting this event, which is where we are. And we're happy to be here. Also, we do have some general partners who are partnering with us for the Building Arizona's Workforce project. And so far, we're looking for more. So if you want to join the party, please, or you know somebody who does, please. Our general partners so far are Salt River Project, Arizona Public Service, and the Salt River, Pima, Maricopa Indian communities. Again, thank you, supporters, for your support and everything you do. I mentioned that we're here to talk about the background report. For those of you that are town hall junkies, you know this. For those of you that are not, just a little bit of explanation. For every town hall, we do a background report that contains facts, information, things that people may need to sit down and have an informed conversation of the topic at hand. That is the purpose of the background report. It's not to tell anybody what to do or how to do it. You will not find that in there. What you will find are some facts and statistics. That report then will go to the community town halls throughout the state of Arizona, future leaders town halls also throughout the state of Arizona. The idea being, okay, here's our report. Sit down, have a conversation, and you tell us what you think we should do to improve, in this case, build Arizona's workforce. The town hall has been around since 1962 and started with a group of movers and shakers getting together in a room and doing that process. We have moved over time to a group of everyone who wants to participate. And we do that through the community town halls, through the future leaders town halls. And you are not going to agree with everything I think, and I'm not going to agree with everything you think. But we can sit in a room and we can have a conversation about a topic a peaceful conversation, be nice to one another, and eventually, surprisingly, we can reach a consensus on many, many things that need to be done to make Arizona better. That doesn't mean that we're all going to agree on everything, but we will come to consensus, and that is what town hall does. Town hall does that every year for a topic like this. We also have done it for cities, towns, other organizations that want to use our process to discuss a topic in a peaceful manner, courteous to one another, and come up with a solution. I think it is time for me to introduce the town hall president. Her name is Tara Jackson, and I think she's going to spend some more time telling us about town hall, the report, and the editors who were involved in putting it together. Tara.
Well, welcome everyone, those who are here and those who are online. It's so wonderful to see such a wonderful, diverse group. And I know, given who's here and who's online, it's also a wonderful statewide group with lots of different people involved. And that really is part of our mission. And I've got this slide up here because, they say a picture says 1,000 words. Well, this is the kind of thing that we do around the state now. Last year, I think we had over 33 programs on our official topic, which was voting and elections. We had about another 30 or more programs on other topics, whether presentations on past topics like mental health, substance use, and homelessness, or as Greg mentioned, we're often hired to come in as a consultant to do this process, whether for organizations, government entities, or others. So it really is for many of us, whether it's Greg, who's a volunteer with his time, and many others, for me, the reason I'm here, this is from our heart because we all care about the future of Arizona. That's why we do this work. Every topic we take on is important and fascinating. And there is a lot that comes from that topic and from these gatherings. But I have learned over 19 years now of doing this that the most important outcome of the town hall process is people building the muscle of how to come together to talk in a respectful way, to solve the solutions of their community, their region, and their state. So that's also why we are here today. And for me, it's the number one reason I'm here. But I love every topic, and workforce development so far has been fascinating. One of the important words of our mission is educate. We educate Arizona's communities in a couple of ways. One is by coming together, you learn from each other. You learn so much from each other in the process. The other one is sharing important, relevant information put together not only by experts, but by a committee that may not be experts on the topic, but who are experts on what makes a good background resource for every different political and geographical perspective. And they have done an incredible job this year. I know we have a couple of our committee members who are in the room today. They didn't know I was going to do this, but they're so important to what we do. Would you mind standing up if you were served on our committee so we can give you a round of applause? Come on, stand up, Elizabeth. I see you over there. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our committees listed in the research report. Now, some people like Elizabeth McNamee, you've been on that committee decades, and that's it's so important. But I bring that up in part, and this is the first time we've ever done this. In this particular background report, we actually have a page, an in-memory page of two important people. One person, Fred Rosenfeld, who I think served on the committee even longer than Elizabeth. And perhaps even more importantly, my mentor and predecessor, Shirley Agnos, who led the Arizona Town Hall for many years, who passed away this year. And so we thought both of those folks had such an incredible contribution to building this organization and building the process of the background report that we wanted to add them to this report in their memory for all they've done. So now I want to talk a little bit about the background report, and then I'm going to introduce you to the two main editors. And they had never done this before. I will tell you, they may have wondered what they got into because it's quite a project. Um, but what a beautiful outcome. First, I want you all to know, if you're here in person, there are these QR codes on your table. You can download the report from these QR codes. If you're online, the report is online. It really is an amazing resource. If you're here in person, we have a few of these on your table. If you will use it, wonderful. If you won't use it, please keep it here or help support the cost of publicizing them and publishing them. Seriously, again, we are a nonprofit, and this is a great report. Um, I want to talk briefly about a little more about how this report is used, given this photo up here, and then we'll get to setting the stage by learning more about the workforce development topic. Greg mentioned we do these community town halls around the state. Part of the reason we have this program early in the year is that if you think this process would be powerful for your community, and by community, it could be a geographical community, it could be an organizational community that's statewide. It could be virtual, it could be in person, it could be all of the above. Then come see us during the optional networking opportunity we have after this program, or contact us by email. We may already be in the process of scheduling a program in your community, or we may not. The more people we have engaging in this process, learning about some really important things you'll hear about today, and figuring out how to solve them on a community basis, the more we will all get through this together. One last part on those community town halls and our mission before I turn to the report itself. One of our keywords in our mission is empower. And we believe that every person who attends a program has the power to be a part of creating positive change on the topic. That means if we hold a future leaders town hall, those 15 and 16-year-old students, we want to empower them to be a part of that process. Everyone's voice and action matters. And so don't think if you have a community of folks and they're not elected leaders, that you shouldn't have a program. In fact, if you represent a community that you think needs to talk about this and needs to know how to get in the pipeline to be trained to be the future workers, their voices need to be heard as equally as the employers and the elected leaders. And that's what we do. We help bring all those voices together. So let's talk about this amazing report that you have in front of you. I mentioned that there were two editors who really carried a heavy lift of putting this together. It is an incredibly, not only beautiful, but informative report. And the person who chaired that effort is with Maricopa Community. Oops, sorry. Let me skip ahead here. With Maricopa Community Colleges. And in fact, it was his presentation at an annual meeting that got those in the room to pick workforce development as the topic for the year. And then not knowing what he was in for, he agreed to edit the background report. So please welcome the Chief Officer of Workforce and Economic Development for Maricopa Community Colleges, Daniel Barajas.
Good morning, and a lot of friendly faces that I've already seen in the audience, so it's good to be here. And I'm just going to make light of it because Tara's already done it. Did we know what we were getting ourselves into? Not even close. But it's been a very rewarding journey for me. And um, as a proud member of the Maricopa Community Colleges family, I'd like to welcome this audience certainly to Rio Salado College, one of the 10 awesome community colleges within our system. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about community colleges in just a moment, because I do think they are the backbone and maybe an engine for driving what is the workforce talent need for the state of Arizona moving forward. But I'll get to that. Again, my name is Daniel Barajas, and I'm proud to serve as the Chief Officer for Workforce and Economic Development for the Maricopa Colleges, which means a lot, but I'm going to be very strict with myself here and not tell too many stories. Um, I would also like to say there's a lot of people, maybe more organizations. If you read through the the report, you'll see we resourced everybody. We had to in order to tell a comprehensive story. So I can't thank everybody for that, but I would like to thank two people in particular. Certainly Dr. Stephen Gonzalez, our chancellor, for his support and mentorship. And Dr. Eddie Jenna, I saw there he is in the corner. Dr. Eddie Jenna serves as the Senior Vice Chancellor for External Affairs, of which Workforce and Economic Development happens to reside. And so I get to call him boss. And he's been an amazing supporter of this project, as well as a confidant, a guide, and also a mentor in the space. So thank you, Eddie, very much for that. So I want to talk a little bit about my journey. I'm going to mirror a little bit of what Tara had to say, but June 16th, a date that will live in infamy. The Arizona Town Hall invited me to do a presentation on workforce development. What I would later learn was that they were also going to be discussing the topics that they wanted to consider for the report. I didn't know that much about Town Hall. I didn't know a lot about what I was going there to do exactly, but I had given hundreds of workforce development presentations, and I thought, I can do this. I would later learn that other topics that I almost felt like I was competing against in a moment was water and housing, which are two terribly important issues for the state of Arizona. But interestingly enough, workforce development won the day, thankfully, in my opinion. But housing, there's a chapter in housing and how that impacts workforce development in the state. So some of that made it in there because they're just such connected topics as well. And so I won the day on the June 16th. About a year later, maybe July or August, I get a call. I'm going to also point out another colleague of mine, Deanna Villanueva-Saucedo. She's a long-standing member of Arizona Town Hall and amazing at what she does, but somehow she got me this gig. So I get this call from Deanna, and then says, you're going to meet with, again, Tara, who I got to work with, and another amazing woman, Patricia Norris, in this case, who also became kind of the guiding lights for the work that you see in front of us. Another guiding light group, again, and they were recognized earlier, is the membership for the review committee, is what we call them. So it's been a team effort all the way. But with that, I think one of the smartest things that I did early on in the process, because as I really thought about it and it sunk in, I gathered a partner that happens to work on my team. And that's Jennifer Kaufman Fourness, who's a program director within the Workforce and Economic Development Strategy Office for our district. And she ultimately, reluctantly, no, she was very willing to partner with me and co-edit, co-author this report, if you will, because it at least needed two individuals. So I'd like to bring her up for a few words, and then I'm going to address you one more time, and then we'll keep going.
Thank you, Daniel. I guess if we're making light, it's not as if I had a choice, but truly, I'm so fortunate to have been part of this project. And I'd really like to thank, I don't know if anybody is in the room, but our amazing, magical marketing and communications team, primarily Brittany Lewis, Tom Kaiser, and Sean Layton, who really made this publication as beautiful and as well organized and as well edited as it is. It will be picked up by people who are not typically involved in workforce, and that's exactly the point. I've been doing work where workforce development and higher education come together for about 20 years, but even that is a silo in this space. Through the work of putting this report together, I was able to do a little more of a deep dive into spaces that have already been mentioned: housing, immigration, education, incarceration rates. There were some really eye-opening and shocking statistics that I learned that are truly affecting workforce development in Arizona. So I am fortunate now to be on this side of the completion of the background report. I really do feel like I have a much better understanding of why we are where we are in Arizona and what it's going to take to get where we want to be. So again, so fortunate to be here. Thank you all for making the time to be here. I look forward to this conversation and all the conversations that follow. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you. Could not have done it without you. With that said, I'm just going to conclude my remarks with the idea of just a bit about the background report. And Jennifer already has alluded to the idea that even though we've been workforce development professionals for a long time, probably more than I care to admit, for me, it's been more than 30 years in the Arizona Community College system, working with career and technical education. I see some practitioners out here, for sure, good partners. But I learned things as well. And the thing to walk away as it relates to workforce development, economic development, as this report is a snapshot, to be sure, because we happened to write this report during the time of the presidential election. And there was a changeover, and now we're seeing different things come from that. And so it's forever moving and evolving, and that's what we can expect in the state of Arizona. So I just want to give you a few things. Number one, this report is there's what I think we thought we were going to write, and then what we wrote, because it took a long time to get there and calibrate. But it's meant to look at workforce development as a topic. It's meant to lend definition and understanding. But at the end of the day, it's to highlight key, not everything, but key issues and challenge points in the state of Arizona, and things that I think not only the urban, but certainly the rural communities need to understand and acknowledge. Please know that the rural community colleges, and I grew up in Yuma, Arizona. And so I used to hear about the great state of Maricopa a lot. And now I'm here. But I have a great understanding of the idea of what that means and how rural communities can feel in that space. And so this report is meant to be a voice for every part of Arizona. So that's one. Two, this is not a silver bullet report by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it probably calls out more challenge points than solutions. It wasn't, as Greg alluded to, this is not here to fix anything, but to call out an understanding of things and cause conversation, cause debate, cause thinking that will then hopefully lead towards strategic planning as we move forward in the state and make us a better group. The report was also meant to be aesthetically pleasing. So to the subject matter experts out there in workforce development, you'll see that this is scratching the surface with a lot of things, and that's okay, because this is really meant for that person out in the community that maybe doesn't understand workforce development and wants to learn more. So to that end, we wanted to be aesthetically pleasing. We wrote it in a real practical way. It wasn't, the one thing we knew we didn't want to do was write an academic research paper. That was not the goal here. However, it is littered with data and artifacts and sources, because the hope is that the reader will then want to educate themselves more as they move forward and do their own research, because this is such a moving target. So having an attractive and interesting document was also super important to us. And then I think lastly, and I'm very proud of this. I just mentioned that I've worked in the community college system for pretty much my whole professional life. And I think the community colleges can often be overlooked in many cases. And so to that end, when I was asked to be part of this, I couldn't say no, because it was a community college that was getting asked to author this. And that's a very special thing for me personally and professionally. So there's a lot of lean into the community colleges. You'll see a chapter there that calls out all of the community colleges in the state of Arizona as workforce champions in an incredible network. And so again, just very proud to have written this, kind of representing the community college space, as well as others as we move forward with this. So again, it was ultimately our pleasure, even though we joke about it a little bit, to be involved in this, and it's a blessing to have been asked to participate with you, Tara, Greg, and to the rest of the Arizona Town Hall community. Thank you for inviting us into the family. With that, I'm gonna pass it back to Tara. Oh, to Greg, thank you.
Thanks to Tara for your comments a little earlier, explaining better than I could how the process works. That's why she's the president. Many thanks to Daniel and Jennifer and your team for the work that went into this. I have this, I don't know, problem or whatever you want to call it, where every time one of these comes out, I have to read it. And so I do. And I will tell you that this is one of the most eye-pleasing reports I've seen in a long time. It not only has data that matters and facts and all that, but it looks good and it's a pleasure to read. So again, thank you. We pick these topics, what, 2 years, maybe a little more before we actually get into them. And one of the factors that we talk about when we're picking a topic is, will it be timely when we get around to actually having the discussion? And I don't know if we've been lucky or good or what, but it seems like every year we've been spot on. And my goodness, are we spot on with this one? I look forward to what's going to happen over the next several months. This next part of the program here is the part that I really enjoy because we have 4 experts who are going to come up here and they are going to participate in a panel discussion. And wow, I'm sure it'll be good. And they're going to be guided in that discussion by a moderator whose name you've already heard, and that's Deanna Villanueva-Saucedo. She's the college people here know her well. She's Associate Vice Chancellor, Center of Excellence in Inclusive Democracy for Maricopa Community Colleges. I don't mind saying that for as long as I can remember, she's also been a very good friend of Arizona Town Hall, and we're happy to have her as somebody who is part of our team. I'm going to let her introduce the 4 experts who we're going to hear from shortly. Deanna, it's all yours.
So good morning, everyone. Are you just like just jazzed for this topic now? I know, right? This is an exciting morning. So thank you all for sharing some time with us today. It is absolutely a pleasure for us to host this event. Maricopa Community Colleges and our community college system in general, we are the workhorse of Arizona's economic development, workforce development. Maricopa Community Colleges is the state's largest workforce development champion. And so it was a natural fit for us to host this. And I'm glad that I roped Daniel and his team into doing this. I absolutely have no shame in acknowledging that. Another reason that we take such great pride in partnering with Arizona Town Hall is because civics is front and center in the community college mission. We not only train individuals for jobs, we do not only train individuals to transfer to a university. Part of our inherent mission is to train individuals to be active, engaged citizens in their community. So we, by hosting this today, by partnering with Arizona Town Hall, you are helping us fulfill our civic mission and truly make our communities a better place. So this is the most natural partnership in the world. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our panel today. I'm going to call up our experts. If we could have Kulu Wilson, Chief Workforce Officer for Arizona Commerce Authority, come on down. Jami, VP of Business Development for the Commerce Authority. Welcome to the panel. Kimber, Lanning, CEO and founder, Local First Arizona. And Carlos Contreras, Director, Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity, a good friend of Maricopa. Welcome. So as we begin today's panel, we got a little bit of a preview of what the background report includes, certainly a large topic and front and center for Arizona these days. If we could start off with you, Kalu, talk a little bit about the difference between workforce development, economic development. I think people use terms interchangeably, but really what does that mean for the sector? And then I'll have any other panelists join in with their comments.
Thank you. Good morning. Kalu Wilson, Chief Workforce Officer with the Arizona Commerce Authority. And a great question. That's one of the main positions that I hold at the Commerce Authority, being the Chief Workforce Officer, trying to understand the difference between workforce and economic development. With economic development at the ACA, our goal is to grow the state's economy. And with the workforce development, which I've worked with Carlos and the Office of Economic Opportunity, it's to grow workers in the state. And so trying to figure out what that alignment looks like. With economic development and aligning workforce development, we're very focused on growing the workforce that's aligned to the industry needs. So everything we do for workforce development at the ACA is aligned with the business needs of the industries that are going to help grow our economy here in Arizona. So we're very specific on recruiting and expanding companies that focus on job growth at a specific wage and that are also providing capital expenditures within the state. So I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. Any others want to chime in on this issue?
Sure. I think Carlos Contreras, Office of Economic Opportunity. I think I see it's almost like a coin at both sides of the same coin. A good economic development strategy, which the ACA has been doing a terrific job for the state of Arizona. Over $200 billion of investments have come into the state, which, my background, I spent 26 years at Intel, so a couple of years in government, which from an investment perspective is you have to have the infrastructure, the tax and regulatory environment, and the workers, right? And so we hit all those benchmarks over many, many years. But it also means that all of a sudden you have multi-billion-dollar factories that are coming in, and everything around that starts with affects other industries. For example, construction, right? We can't have more investment coming to the state unless you have a really good construction workforce. And so our mission or our work with ACA has always been like try to keep up with what they're doing, because it feeds, right? So it's kind of a self-feeding mechanism. The more investment comes in, the more demand for workers, the more talent you have, the more you can also attract investments, because companies come in here because we know we can produce the talent. And they don't come in here saying, well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Like you have to prove that you actually can do this. And semiconductors specifically, Motorola was here for a long time. That brought Intel, that brought TSMC. So we have a very long history of the community colleges, the universities delivering on the talent that we need. And so I see them as complementary and also as without either one of them, then both things fail. So we really have to work together.
And I agree. I would just want to add from a rural perspective, a lot of times youth growing up in rural don't have exposure to the types of jobs and opportunities that are there. And so the workforce development piece often needs to come first before you can get to the economic development. So an example would be, we had a program where we were working in a community to expose juniors and seniors in high schools to jobs that were available right in their community. And we did it in partnership with a regional healthcare facility. And 100% of those kids said, I don't want to be a doctor and I don't want to be a nurse. Well, we convinced them to go. It's an 8-week program over the summer. And they learned about speech therapy, physical therapy, high-tech surveillance, nutrition. They walked away with about 12 or 13 different job opportunities or ideas, and they didn't even know those jobs existed right in their community before that program. We got letters from parents that said, my God, you saved my kid's life. He didn't know that physical therapy was a thing. There wasn't a career there, right? And so it's a little bit different in a rural community where you just want to get that exposure, and our community colleges are going to play a critical role. Once the child is thinking, they might be able to stay in their community. And by the way, many of them want to stay. We did a survey of over 500 juniors and seniors, and the vast majority of them want to stay, but 80% of them think they need to leave to build a career. So there's opportunity in our rural communities to really focus on that workforce development through exposure.
Thank you. I think it was alluded to earlier, certainly from our speakers and certainly the introductory comments, really what an interconnected ecosystem that we're talking about when we talk about economic development, workforce development. So Jamie, if we could put you on the spot a little bit, what are some of the threads, if you will, to untangle when we talk about how this exists in a larger ecosystem and sort of the regulations and policies that really impact how we successfully develop workforce development?
Oh, thank you for that. It's Jamie May also, but if I had $1, right? Some of the things that we really look for is, can these communities support some of these efforts? We really take initiatives when, a semiconductor company comes, can this rural area support this? But, maybe if they can't support the chip manufacturing, they can support the packaging efforts. That's a lower skilled sector, but maybe they can support that. Or, I'm glad that you guys mentioned Yuma. We have the first American cobalt refinery coming to Yuma that's going to be breaking ground soon and be operational by 2027, bringing a whole new industry to that area. And with that, hopefully more suppliers in the battery sector so that the Yuma community can also diversify their workforce and their needs. But I will say that the community colleges have played such a huge part, not just, our major universities, but we always bring the employers to those communities and they help develop training programs to help get that workforce established.
Thank you for that. Other panelists want to chime in on the interconnectedness of workforce development. We've already talked about how housing is another impact upon workforce development, and really, what does that ecosystem look like?
Yeah, well, I can share a little perspective on when we're recruiting companies. One of the things we started doing probably 5 years ago, when we are sitting down with the companies that are looking to come to Arizona, we're making sure we're bringing our community college partners to the table very early on and our university partners to be part of that conversation so they can hear from the companies what the companies are looking for if they do select Arizona. So the work happens years in advance of the company actually landing here and then actually doing the hiring ramp. And by that time, the colleges are well on board with what the plan is.
I think on our agency side, so I want to plug a couple of things because if I don't, my team's gonna kill me. One is please go to our website oeo.az.gov. A lot of the data that's in that report. Thank you for using a lot of data and more importantly for adding narrative to it. Really appreciate that. So any type of economic demographic report. So have a ton of economists. We have data scientists too on our team. So we do both publishing the reports, but also doing evaluation work. And on June 17th, 19th, we're going to have a workforce summit at Mesa Convention Center. Please sign up, go to their website and sign up and follow us on LinkedIn. But part of the responsibility that we have is the Workforce Council. There's a Workforce Council, and then we have 12 local workforce boards across the state. And if you look at the composition of those workforce boards, right, you have nonprofits, you have service providers, you have business folks. So it really takes a village. It takes a lot of expertise in order to do the planning that we need to do, and it's very local. To Kimber's point, right, there's things around our state. Maricopa, I think it's like 80% of the job growth occurs in Maricopa. So things that are up here don't work for places like Yuma or Mojave or Yavapai. And there's a lot of innovation going on with the community colleges, with their local industry, but you have to create a space for people to collaborate and to develop mutual goals and responsibilities and accountability, right? And I'm hoping, this process as you go across the state, that it gives an opportunity for people to do that.
Great. Agreed. It is actually 85% of the new jobs created as of 2023 were created in Maricopa County, 5% in Pima County. So that leaves 13 counties then to divide 5% of job growth. So it's just incredibly important that we recognize while we can celebrate job growth, the data tells us that we have some work to do in our rural areas to provide equitable access to these opportunities.
Thank you for those comments, Kimber. If we can stay on you for a second, and then we'll open it up to conversation from the rest of the panelists. Really talk to us about the different regions in Arizona and how this bucket of work may look different as you travel across the state. We've already talked a little bit about Yuma, and certainly our border communities may have very different needs than further up north, the northern border. So what does that look like? And then we haven't even touched upon our tribal communities and economic development workforce needs there as well. So what does that look like as we think of the breadth and depth of Arizona?
It's vast, and there's such a variety of needs and opportunities and strengths. We like to say at the Rural Development Council, if you've met one rural town, you've met one rural town. They all have so many different things to offer. So you've got areas where you're seeing manufacturing, you see areas where entrepreneurship is really strong, agriculture is still strong in certain areas. We're seeing a wide variety of skill sets that pop up. And I think, as I mentioned before, community colleges will be important. But I do think what's coming back to the ecosystem, we're seeing housing that is debilitating growth in our rural areas. We actually have Eastern Arizona College is putting qualified students on a waiting list, not because they don't have capacity, but because they literally have no housing to offer students. And that's a crisis. And that's happening in multiple areas. Certain areas are being hit harder than others, but the ecosystem, I also think childcare, we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm so glad to see that in the report. Childcare is also hindering when you get into more remote areas. Accessing quality childcare gets more and more difficult in the more remote areas. So I think there's some great solutions out there. We just need to put our heads together. I think cooperatively funded childcare, looking at the private sector employers and how they might pool their resources to invest in a certain childcare strategy. I think it's being done in a few other states. I'd love to take a look and nod at what some of the other states are doing to solve some of these crises. But I think at the end of the day, the takeaway is that we have 13 rural counties and each one of them has different strengths and challenges. There are some overarching themes, yes, but we really need to get in there and see what we can do to give them opportunities.
Others want to chime in on this issue of the statewide needs?
Chime in on that. I think one of the challenges we do see is that, compared to Maricopa County, maybe some of the rural communities are not as well equipped when they meet with these companies to say, we can help you with these things. We can help you with the permitting, the zoning. We can help you get the foreign trade zones done. And then we come in and we kind of help develop them and help them with those pitches to those companies, because Phoenix has given that pitch 100 times in the past week, where maybe Cottonwood's gotten it twice in the last month. So there are areas where we do come in and we do help those communities try to fill those gaps of like, well, they're going to need foreign trade zone. Be sure you're prepared to talk about the foreign trade zone and that you can get the permitting done quickly or you can expedite it. We do see those as some challenges, but we do help.
Building on that real quick, business attraction is a strategy that works exceptionally well in our urban areas, but not as much in our rural areas. So thinking about business retention, business expansion, and retaining and growing what they have from within. So basic journeyman programs, one of the challenges that we're seeing in workforce in a little town like Ajo, for example, they don't have a single person under 65 years old that is an electrician, a plumber, a heavy equipment operator, not one under 65. So they created a simple journeyman program, and they have a handful of kids coming through that program who are going to be able to graduate from high school and go right into a high-paying plumbing electrician type job, and that's exceptional. So I think it's important to recognize that business attraction is not necessarily a model that translates well in our rural communities.
Yeah, can I kind of build on Kimber's point? I think the other common theme is healthcare. Like everybody needs nurses, doctors, teachers, public safety officials, right? Construction, electricians. Like we have a dearth of. In Cochise County, for example, there's not a lot of registered contractors. We have a partnership with Arizona Registered Contractors to help people get their license, right, and subsidize that. So there is a lot of common needs. Every community is completely agree. It's completely different. It's actually a lot of fun to learn their topics and their issues and the things that they're facing. But we also have some common areas where we can share resources, where we can share curriculum. If you're community colleges, healthcare, I think is one of those where there's a lot of potential there to do more collaboration. And there's a lot of, like I mentioned, there's a lot of innovation. Like Arizona Western has set up a partnership with Yuma Regional in terms of a build your own strategy. So there's a lot of those things going around. I'm from Nogales and from Santa Cruz County, and I completely agree with Kimber in terms of the economic development picture down there. And I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and there's a little mine going in there, $2.3 billion of investment. It's going to increase South there too. It's going to increase the overall tax base for the county, and it's kind of a a changer in terms of economic conditions for the county. But there's also like a lot of planning that needs to happen there. But there also have existing industries, right? So how do you, it's a small town, 20,000 people that live in Nogales. There's very large investment coming in, and they want to hire local, and so it's a very unique economic development challenge in terms of how do I make sure that I don't decimate the other industries that are there. And that is an example where Pima has a collaboration with Santa Cruz. They're doing the training. We have a relationship with Maricopa in Central around an advanced manufacturing program, and that mine is going to be it's like an advanced manufacturing facility basically. And so that is an example where we can share curriculum, we can share resources, and where we can give those students an option to pick multiple employers. This is called Ready, Take, Go. It's on our website. But that, I think we need to do more of those collaborations, and we also need to support the local businesses, the local entrepreneurs, and the rural communities. Kimber does a fantastic job of doing that, and we've seen a little bit of that with our micro business lending program, where we're working with lenders all throughout the state and getting $50,000 up to $50,000 loans to small businesses less than 5. And we see a lot of really great energy from the rural communities in terms of small business sector.
Thank you for that. For our in-person attendees, if you have questions, please write them on the comment cards. We have some folks that will run around and pick those up. For our online attendees, feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many of those questions as we move along today. So I've heard the theme of collaboration come up a few times, and I have yet to encounter a town hall topic where increased collaboration isn't something that people aren't recommending. The need for collaboration among nonprofits or civic groups, the list goes on and on. So we've heard collaboration mentioned a couple of times. What are the impediments to increase collaboration or resource sharing or curriculum sharing? Kalu, I see you already grinning at me. So you want to start off with this one? What is keeping us from maximizing these opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, definitely competing priorities, right? We all come into it with our own goal and our own mission and what we're trying to accomplish. And so I find sometimes, there's only so many hours in a day, and you want to collaborate, but you also want to make sure you're meeting your deliverables. And so trying to find that common ground, I think, can be a little difficult sometimes. I know I get a lot of partnership requests and partnership meetings and things like that. And, I've had to figure out how to balance that demand for partnership and engagement with getting my work done and using my PTO and going home by a certain time. But not to be sidetracked really quick, I just want to say, Daniel and I talked about this report very briefly yesterday, and looking at it today and just this conversation, I would say this report is definitely super useful for the workforce practitioner. I moved to Arizona in 2019, had no clue about the full ecosystem in terms of, the community colleges, the CTEDs, the this, the that. And I do think I do have 2 new staff members that joined my team, and I will be giving this to them as an onboarding requirement because I do think this summarizes Arizona's workforce in a very comprehensive way. And what I've noticed over the years is, workforce practitioners, we're all coming to it from a different angle. Some come from it from education, some come from the community-based organizations, so on and so forth. And having something that comprehensively summarizes what workforce is and what the needs are here in Arizona is super helpful. So I would suggest that we do get this in the hands of practitioners as well.
Thank you for that great plug. Other comments around collaboration and really what is keeping us from maximizing those opportunities? We talk about it a lot in Arizona, but sometimes don't execute quite as effectively.
You know, from our lens, oftentimes the community colleges have to be scrappy and focus on their own budgets, and they tend to prioritize their own immediate needs. And understandably, right? It's not a criticism, but getting to a place where there's more of a natural tendency to share data, more of a natural tendency to say, hey, wait, you're really good at this. Why don't you do that? And I'll do this. And thinking about it collaboratively instead of each region thinking they have to be all things to all people. There's so much technology available that you can offer a job seeker high quality curriculum across different platforms so that every college doesn't have to offer everything. So I think if we could get out of that sort of siloed mindset, I think it would be really beneficial. I also think we need more current data, right? There's not enough really current data as to what's happening. And with technology moving as quickly as it is, and the private sector demands changing as quickly as they are, we need more regular data to feed back to our community colleges to enhance that level of collaboration.
Just a couple comments on our side. So one of the things that we've done as an agency is get the community colleges together once a quarter. So we pull them in, we have a 3 or 4 hour meeting. What are the common areas? You know, where can we collaborate? And just have a very open discussion about where people are at. I think what's missing sometimes, and especially for, is there's not a lot of structures in place in the state to allow folks to do that. And so, you know, people get busy, to Kimber's point, and you have, you know, everyone's under resourced, right? And so everyone's trying the best that they can. And so we pull together the colleges to identify, you know, what are the things that we're interested in? Where can we collaborate? As these federal grants come out, like where can we collaborate so that we pull together a regional grant or a statewide grant? So that way we're more competitive, because you kind of see us competing against each other when it comes to some of these federal competitive grants, and then no one gets anything. So I think until there is a willingness to maybe park the ego a little bit, or park the logo, and for a greater good to participate. I think and those are very tough conversations. But that's kind of what means collaboration. If we don't have mutual goals, then we're not collaborating. We're just talking about how great my stuff is. You're talking about how great your stuff is. And people in this room are doing some terrific things. I would challenge everyone, including myself, to how can you be better by collaborating with somebody else, truly collaborating with somebody else and having a mutual goal. And so, as I mentioned, the colleges, and we see things like with the colleges like Ready Tech Go, where we have, you know, it's very hard for faculty to approve to collaborate on curriculum, right? I mean, that's like, cool, cow, that's like a huge deal. And so somehow these 3 colleges were able to do that, and we have alignment of curriculum and courses and industry alignment. And so it's an efficiency issue. It's also you know, more choices for our students and more choices for industry. And like when we hit the sweet spot and everybody benefits, I think it's, to your point, that's when things get advanced. And we see that on the construction side with an initiative that we're running for the governor build at AZ, which is doubling the number of apprentices by 2026. You have to get people together. You have to have tough conversation, but you have to agree on what are we going to accomplish together. And if you can't get there, then the thing just kind of falls apart.
So we might just have to start creating new bumper stickers, Carlos. I don't know, park the ego, park the logo. That can be a challenging thing for folks in our sector to do. So issue taken. I'll open this up to anybody on the panel that wants to start off this conversation, but I expect that we can probably have some robust discussion here. In the community college or higher ed sector, we talk often about a demographic cliff. We can't rely on just graduating high school seniors anymore because of declining birth rates. Question that came in from the audience, I see lots of heads nodding, was we're not going to birth our way out and into a greater workforce participation. So that is just not going to happen. We've that's making headlines just as of this week. So how can we encourage Arizonans not in the workforce to join the workforce? I hear a lot of hmms out there. They're waiting on your wisdom. Anybody want to start off with this one?
I guess I'll take it. So one of the things we've been leaning into from an economic development perspective is offering more short-term training opportunities, removing some of those barriers, bringing some of those short-term training opportunities closer to where individuals live. I know I see in the report you guys talk about the Future 48 Workforce Accelerators. Those are training centers that we've built in collaboration with our community college partners to offer short-term training opportunities. I know the Quick Start Bootcamp was another one that we supported, the Semiconductor Quick Start Bootcamp with Leah and Maricopa Community Colleges. So I think, trying to let workers know that you can join the workforce without having a bachelor's degree, maybe even sometimes without having a 2-year degree. And there are great wages available with just a credential.
On to that too, that, from an attraction standpoint, it's our job at the state to ensure that these companies continue to come, but we're not just focused on these super high-tech chip manufacturers or battery manufacturers, their supply chain, lower skilled type of jobs. We're having an energy crisis here currently in the US, and we have a ton of transformer companies looking at Arizona currently. Average wage on that's probably about 50 to 60,000. You could come in there with a high school diploma or a 2-year program, and a lot of those companies are willing to help pay for your apprenticeships. So we're focused on trying to attract those type of companies as well.
I just add to making sure with all the funding that we have and deploy for workforce development, that we are offering support services to help reduce barriers, because that's just a fact, right? People are going to need support with transportation, childcare, and whatever other barriers. So we're always making sure we're including dollars, not just for the training or the training development piece of it, but making sure we're thinking about the entire person and what it's going to take for them to get to that training program or get to work.
This is about, to me, one of the biggest questions that we could possibly tackle on a panel. But I think looking comprehensively is, the high level view. And what I mean by that is the exposure that I talked about earlier, all the way to looking at immigration reform and policies that are related to discouraging people who've been there their whole lives from going to work. And this one it's a big one. I'm just floating an idea, but what if we took something like Ready, Tech, Go and made it open source? Who do you think we would find out there? We don't know. I also think that it's so important to recognize in our rural communities the silver tsunami, they call it, right? These people who've owned businesses for many, many years who are getting to retire, and there's no one to buy those businesses. So looking at alternative ownership strategies, worker-owned cooperatives, ESOPs, other types of models that we could be focusing on to retain the jobs that are already there and further develop the skills of those employees to begin thinking like owners. And a lot of times those companies provide critical services, and you start to see those critical services go away, you're diminishing the quality of life in those communities and an opportunity to stay there. We hit on childcare, but getting people into the workforce, there's so many aspects to looking at that equation. It looks so different when you're in a rural or a tribal community, overcoming barrier after barrier. But I do think there's a lot of talent out there that's undiscovered, and we haven't really even tapped yet in this conversation on justice impacted individuals, other people who are facing barriers because of a whole different type of obstacle that's been put in front of them. So, and that's going to be critical.
One thing I'd like to add on to that, since you mentioned barriers, is that, I hear a lot from clients when they're looking in the valley or in the rural areas is, where's the public transportation? We have the light rail, but it's in the downtown or the Tempe area. But, if you were to take a bus from the west side to downtown, it might take you 2 hours to get there. Or, Kingman, we had a conversation once about, just establishing a bus route from the community college to the industrial park where we're seeing a ton of growth so that people could take a class, come to work and things like that. And, how do we address those things? Because if we eliminate that barrier, we get more people into the workforce.
One more thing I just thought of that I wanted to share a story with you because it kind of goes back to the work on collaboration as well. In our rural communities, with a lack of exposure and understanding, I just wanted to share this story with you. We had an employer who was so excited about this young guy that started. He had all the potential, and he just said, I couldn't believe this 19-year-old was so good at this, and I was so excited about his future. And then he just stopped showing up, never came back, wouldn't return my calls. So this employer became so concerned, he got in his car and drove over to the kid's house. Kid answered the door and was shocked, like, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "Where'd you go, man? You were doing so good." And he goes, "Well, I got sick, so I figured I'd just be fired." Now, I want us to all think about that. This kid did not know there was paid time off. This kid did not understand. The employer was like, "You got sick?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just couldn't get out of bed for a couple of days." And think about if the employer hadn't done that, who knows where that kid he grabs the kid and goes, "No, man, you're great at this. Couple of days off, you're good. Come on back." So collaboration in how do we as a community come together to help these kids get exposure to the workforce that they're not currently getting. This is a 19-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, I always use this analogy. Like I think like the sports world has it figured out. Like if there's somebody that can throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball in high school, somehow that person gets found, right? But somebody that has a talent that grows up in the wrong place, goes to a tough school, has family issues, they just fall behind. And how do you catch up? And so I think to answer your question, how do we get more people participating is we have to kind of do some de-risking for people to jump in. And we have to open up opportunities like justice involved individuals. That governor just launched an initiative yesterday with corrections around this. And so there's some barriers that I think we have a lot of experts here that could tell you about the barriers, but like we have to tackle those. And for somebody that is currently working a minimum wage job, who has to pay rent, who might have kids, and is interested in healthcare or is interested in semiconductor, and like, what are you talking about? I have to give up my job. It's uncertainty in terms of risk, and I have to take the leap of faith, right? We have to kind of de-risk as much of that as possible. So looking at models like apprenticeship models where people go and earn while you learn, right? And you get the training, you get the benefits. As I mentioned earlier, that we have an initiative for construction. The electricians here in Maricopa have 3,000 applications a year for 600 spots, right? And if you go look at to your point about electricians and the grading of that population, there are a lot of retirements coming down. And guess what? There's data centers coming in, right? Gulu data centers, everything's getting electrified. We need more electricians. They make really good money, and we are tapped out in terms of capacity. So we just have to give more opportunities for people, and we have to de-risk. Why are we putting on an individual to quit your job, go back to school, and good luck if you find another job? So we have to create pathways that are clear in terms of if you go down this path, good chance you can get a job that makes this much money. And we have to make it very transparent, to your point, open. And I think that's when you'll see more participation in some of those folks that are sitting, in addition to like a bunch of barriers that are out there, like healthcare, transportation, the things that you guys talked about.
I completely agree. I also want to acknowledge that our rural high schools, if they have counselors, they are spread so thin that the majority of their time goes towards college-bound kids. And there's just very little attention on kids that are just fantastic candidates to go into the trades. And we desperately need that. So how do we get them more resources to be able to, offer an array of support for the different types of students they have?
I appreciate the depth of the conversation around just this one question. In education, we often talk about how we provide wraparound supports for students to be successful, but now we can translate that conversation into workforce development as well. How do we provide some wraparound supports to make sure that people can get to work, even that physical transportation to and from work, and address all the barriers that individuals might be facing? I'm going to shift the conversation just a little bit. Carlos, you're on the spot for this one. And then whoever else would like to chime in. We have a question about the data in the report seeming to be all non-farm data. But since rural economies are often agricultural, how can we make sure that those needs and opportunities are accounted for as well?
I think, and I'm going to have to talk to my economist about this, but we have both sets of data. And I think that's just BLS in terms of how they classify things. But I'm certainly, please reach out if there's like a specific thing that you're looking for, because we probably have it. Sorry, it kind of.
No, it's okay. No apologies necessary. Can we talk a little bit? Any other thoughts about the agricultural section? You know, if we talk about the 5 C's, chips wasn't always in there, right? We had some other C's in our economy. So what does that look like in terms of workforce development?
So I could do an entire half day on ag and the importance of ag and what I think we're missing in Arizona. Let me just say that if we become a state that doesn't grow our own food and figure out how to have access to that food, we're going to be importing food from somewhere else. We're going to be paying more for that food, and we're going to be standing in line in the next crisis. This is a critical issue, and we need to be focused on all the technology, research, and development around desert adapted crops that deliver protein, nutrition, growing it in a whole new way. But I think it's so important for folks to, you know, I just think that the image of agriculture in your mind is so outdated. It's so outdated. So thinking comprehensively about our food system, the way I explain it to folks is in Arizona, our food system has tons of growers, tons and tons of growers, and we're all eaters, lots of eaters. In the middle, you've got processing, aggregation, distribution, all those things, packaging, those companies and innovators that can be plugged in the middle there. There's so many jobs in the ag space that have nothing to do with being on the farm or in the field that we're not really actively thinking about. Consider that, you know, we're growing tomatoes to export them so that we can import somebody else's tomatoes. And the tomatoes that we do grow, we ship them to Mexico to be processed and ship them back to us because we don't have those companies and jobs here in Arizona. So there's so much opportunity. And we have the director of ag right over here, Paul Brierly, who could talk way more intelligently about this than I can. But I would just say that, you know, even when we, you know, there's more talk around regenerative agriculture all around the country, and Arizona can and should be leading that conversation around desert adapted foods, regenerative ag, and how we can really think about our food system more holistically than just our typical ag is farm labor.
Can I jump back in because Paul is over there and he's gonna chat with me afterwards? But I do want to do a big plug for UMA, for example, right? There's the U of A has a research center down there for agriculture, doing amazing things, and so I think there's an innovation aspect to this too in terms of agriculture and what's going on with technology, what's going on with AI. Information to your point in terms of quick data turns, right, for this, that we really are well positioned to have that explode in terms of just the innovation that can come out of that. And Paul ran that center before he was director, and he has lots of really, really good examples about what's going on down there.
Thank you all for that. Another question, I'm going to turn to our friends from ACA for this. A few related questions around the issue of how to attract businesses who want to invest in the community. And investment might take any shape or form, right? We talk investment from dollars, infrastructure, civic commitment to boards and commissions. How do we attract businesses that are willing to give back, in essence?
I'll take that one. You know, it just depends on the company. I'm working with a company currently. They're looking in the metro. And, you know, one of the big talking points that we didn't know before we met with them was that and the current location that they're in is that they're a huge pillar in the community. They want to give back. They started a workforce development fund for one of the local community colleges in the state that they're currently in, and they develop their own workforce. They also give out large bonuses, and they're not a high paying field to say, but they're really wanting to establish a family. And I know people say we're family here, wah, wah, but they really want to say that and really develop that. They also, we see multiple companies coming in who want to have doctors on site where their families can come in and get treated and for free, or help with childcare needs. We target certain sectors and certain sectors respond to that in that way, but yeah, it just depends on the sector, I would say.
I would just add that I think it's important that we think again holistically. It's wildly important that we have a diverse economic development strategy, and I think these teams do a great job with that. But as we think about attracting companies with high-paying jobs, there's a disconnect in our investment in K-12 education, right? If we're attracting companies that have high-wage jobs, then it's in our best interest to invest in developing a pipeline of Arizona kids to get those jobs. And absent that, we're just paying extra for somebody else's bright young kids to come here and take those jobs. And if you're a kid that's raised in our school systems here, you may be out of luck for getting a pathway, or I should say you'd be very lucky to find that pathway to get those jobs. So again, looking comprehensively at how we're investing in K-12 education is a critical component to meeting the needs of those companies that are coming here.
I just want to add on to that really quick, because I 100% agree with you. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I quiz her and her friends all the time if they know anything about semiconductors or anything, because we're developing that workforce for them, right? Those are generational jobs, and I get zero response from that. But how do we engage with them and develop that interest? I 100% agree.
I think just coming from my previous employer, I think a piece of advice if you're trying to get more companies involved is, what are they good at? Like, what's their core competency? And then just in our case for Intel, it was science and technology and math. And so if you wanted to get Intel involved in anything from a K-12 perspective, those were the topics, right? And so there's a lot of passionate employees that want to give back. And so what do you bring them into schools, science fair, competitions, teacher development, teacher training. So there's a lot of space there, but you just have to make it open and do a little research around what they're good at and what should be your ask, and start small and then work your way up and build a relationship just like anywhere else. But I think we have wonderful companies. We have wonderful small companies. We have, in the small communities, people can't hide, right? You have to cooperate and be involved because they see each other in the grocery store and stuff. So I think there's lots of opportunities there still.
That's sometimes the company, when they're requesting information from us to expand to Arizona, we'll ask that question around, their corporate social responsibility and how they can engage. For example, Jami and I just worked on one last week around the company wanting to engage with the tribal communities. So in that case, we put together a list of 10 other companies in Arizona that is successfully engaging with the tribes to give them ideas of how they can engage. But to be honest, sometimes they're not asking us around how they can engage with the community, and that's not a prerequisite of ours in terms of recruiting a company. But what we will do is give them ideas of how they can engage very early on with our ecosystem here. Like I mentioned earlier, inviting the colleges, we invite Arizona at Work, we invite different workforce and education partners to the table early, so they can see how we are working with companies actively in Arizona to engage and add value to our communities.
Thank you for that. So sticking on the idea of business retention, business attraction, what role does entrepreneurship and small business development play in this larger workforce development arena? I always hear the joke, economic developers want to land the big whale, right? those big, huge manufacturing companies, but what about all of the small businesses that really are the backbone of economies, particularly in rural areas?
Yeah, I love this question. Yes, yeah, right. I know. Our small businesses, just the private sector in general in rural communities, are really leading the way in opportunity, and they're by nature engaged in the community because they largely grew up there. So I think in order to meet the job needs of the future, it's critical that we look at developing entrepreneurship, particularly in clean energy. There's so many job and company opportunities out there that can be developed regionally, locally. And so, for example, we're working with the Urban Institute right now to produce a study looking at what will the job needs be in Southern Arizona for having an equitable transition to a clean economy. And that it's really so important that we think about the tax credits that are available and things. You have additional opportunity for tax credits if you're hiring diverse owned companies. The way it's set up right now, and that really incentivizes us to bring more small businesses into the conversation. And I think that spirit of diverse economy has to be an emphasis in our across our state, not only just in our rural or tribal areas, but bringing opportunity means, splitting up contracts. For example, we just worked with the city of Phoenix on something as simple as their landscaping contract, which was a massive contract that they'd had with one company for 10 years. We broke that into 15 regions, smaller chunks, and totally diversified those contracts. And now there's 15 smaller companies that have a piece of that. And that is really a stronger way to grow jobs and opportunities across diverse populations. So I think that entrepreneurship is going to be critical in building quality companies, homegrown companies that have a desire to create living wage jobs and opportunities in their communities. Is going to be an essential. We're not going to be able to attract our way out of this. We have to grow from within, and entrepreneurship is the way to do that.
I think I mentioned earlier our agency runs for the state of Arizona a micro business loan program. So it's $5 million that was awarded to our agency. We work with community lending institutions, and then they serve small businesses less than 5. Part of that also is technical assistance. So you have an entrepreneur or a small business that's just busy running their business. They might not have the financial tools like to do income statements, balance sheets. They go to a bank and they can't get a loan, right? Because they don't have all this paperwork. So there is this sector that's not being served right now that is entrepreneurial and small, and they're running on credit cards, they're running on loans from relatives, right? And they can't expand, they can't grow. And so that's what this program is meant to do, is give up to $50,000 loan, very competitive, low interest rates, right? Just to get people going. And we've seen things like construction, a person that's got a construction company in Cochise County and he's building sustainable homes and he needed to buy another truck. Right. We've seen things like in the Sedona area with somebody that needed to buy another food truck and a refrigerator for his food truck. So these are very small investment that make a big difference for these businesses to thrive and grow. And I'm not sure Kimber has like a ton of examples, I'm sure, but it's like there are community organizations out there like Local First that are working really hard to get people the resources that they need. And sometimes it's technical assistance to get them to a loan and then grow their business. And then they can go after bigger loans. And that is, that's energy that's out there, and that's growth that's out there for the state. And it's in every single corner of the state. And then now we have about 26 loans, 7 lending partners throughout the state, 27 loans that we've given out, or these businesses have given out.
And I want to congratulate Carlos and the governor because recognizing this access to capital issue, that it's truly been a silent sleeper of a killer here in Arizona. We have 8 counties that have no local decision making with lending, and that stunts the growth of entrepreneurs. So what you've been able to do stepping into that space with in partnership with our community development financial institutions, CDFIs and others. But CDFIs, you should all know, are under attack right now. They are under attack to be defunded. And they play a critical role in communities that may not have anything but a big global bank branches, but there's no local lending decision making happening in those branches. So it's so important that we get into the character based lending. You said I have a lot of examples. I want to just give you one. We had a contractor. He had a 4-year contract with Cox Communications to do all of the trenching for the cabling in southeastern Arizona. Could not find a loan to save his life. To meet his deadline, he needed 2 extra trucks and 4 more employees. Couldn't get a loan anywhere. With character-based lending, all I wanted to do was look at his contract. I don't need your tax returns. You don't need to have 2 years of it. You have a contract. If I can get you this money, you can create those jobs and buy 2 more trucks and go. He paid us back in 6 months, even though we gave him a 3-year term. So it's a need out there. And I think what you're doing is so critically important. But it back to the holistic question, that is another thing that we need to keep our eye on here in Arizona.
So in terms of resources, and I think all of you have mentioned at some point in time, grants, federal grants, whether that's state grants, local grants, it varies. So how does the current political landscape affect workforce development, particularly around this issue of grant funding? Notice I didn't pick on anyone. Whoever wants to start off that conversation.
Who wants to touch it?
I just
No
don't want to be a
comment.
ball
Just
hog.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now I'll just speak for myself. I feel like we're in a holding pattern. In the past, we typically knew things were coming and when they were coming, and but just with all the disruption right now, it's hard to know and plan. And the grants that we have been awarded, we were just talking yesterday, we want to draw those down as soon as possible and get those out and paid. So yeah, I mean, we're just, even with the CHIPS Act, that's a big one that we had planned and ramped and had all of our organizations on board, ready to go. And we're just waiting. So hopefully, those will start flowing pretty soon, and hopefully we're just hurrying up and waiting, and we'll be rushing. Fingers crossed.
I'll tag on to that too. On the end of June, the Quality Jobs Program is set to sunset. It did not get renewed this year in the legislature, and it is a critical tool to attract businesses, help businesses expand, help those small businesses who are experiencing growth get some incentives from the state. And I would encourage people to reach out to their legislators.
And can I add to having a diversity of funds is important. Diversifying the funds, I think, is really important. So I'll use the example of our apprenticeship program. We set aside $4 million to support apprenticeships for the semiconductor industry. And when the federal funds were paused, we were able to continue to support organizations like TSMC and Intel roll out their programs because we had those funds waiting, and apprentices were able to continue their technical instruction at Maricopa community colleges and continue to work. So I think having a diversity of funds that are supporting the same efforts just to be safe is important.
Sure. And I would just add, there are so many challenges right now. So we have rural communities that have already deployed funds on maybe a clean energy type project. Let's just say a solar project. They've already deployed funds, and now they're being told they're not going to be reimbursed. And so there's really 2 impacts there. There's the primary impact, which is the inability to finish the project and the elimination of the jobs that were working on the project. But there's the secondary impact of the budget crisis that is looming now that they have this huge hole in their budget when their fiscal comes around. So to Clue's point, the diversity, we're not yet sure what's going to happen with the tax credits that are out there for clean energy. And there were tons of low interest, like 1% interest loans, big dollars for energy infrastructure that have now been rescinded. So I think it's too soon for us to tell what the workforce implications are going to be. But just rest assured they will be massive. And to your point, we need to be having those conversations sooner than later because they will be significant.
I think I agree. I think it's too soon, but there's also, the thing that we just have to keep going. Like we have $200 billion of investment. Everything's in a cycle. We have great fundamentals in the state, and we have a lot of great, good paying jobs that are out there for people, and we just have to keep going. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's a testament to the state and to the folks in this room, and sure that worked very hard to get us to where we are. We just have to kind of keep going.
So let's pick up on that thread, Carlos. We had a question come in online about sustainability of initiatives. So we all acknowledge we want to keep going, want to make sure that we continue the great work that's happening. You've all mentioned awesome success stories happening across Arizona. The person that asked the question talked about how initiatives get off the ground, but funding doesn't always follow, or it's not sustainable funding. Initiatives collapse. So where is the state in this? Where are leaders on this? And what can be done to get state leadership, local leadership, such as mayors, et cetera, on board and behind it?
Yeah, I think I'm a really big believer that whenever you start something, you have to answer that question, like, what's the sustainability of this? And where do you have partners? Who's going to maintain this? Where's the value? And then who are your partners, right? And so I think we are going to have, there's going to be things that come up and go and don't work, and it's fine. It's part of the experiment, right? But we have to, initially when we launch these things, have to get partners around the table that are going to be there in terms of an advocate, or in terms of probably another funding source. And so we have to be smart about these types of things and how we set ourselves up. If there's value there, I'm a firm believer that if there's value there, there's going to be some sort of funding that's available there, if there is value there. But we have to tell that story about what is the value, what are we trying to do, what is the thing doing, and do you really want to fund that? And I know there's a lot of examples right now at the federal level of things that are very valuable that are getting cut. So we just have to kind of keep reminding our legislators, our folks, about the value that's out there.
Yes, and yes. I want to add that for our nonprofits or intermediaries that have been helping with workforce and economic development, I think that it's critical that we get better at measuring the right data points and reporting and storytelling, getting out in front of that and being able to demonstrate the ROI on these investments is critical. I think too often, people are spread thin and they're head down and they're working, and then the end of the funding is 3 months out and they're like, well, what do you mean? We've been doing all this great work, but you haven't been out in front of it, talking about it, measuring it, telling the story. Reports like this are incredibly important.
Thank you. So a question came in about tribal communities. How do we, and I guess, the larger ecosystem, support tribal communities, including those who are rural, in developing workforce and economic opportunities? And I'll let any of our panelists start with that one.
I'll chime in. I think that the tribal community colleges are, really, they're critical, but they also need to be, I think, more included in those partnerships and opportunities. I think open source would go a long way in our tribal communities that are particularly remote. And I also think just, providing opportunity for youth to get exposure. I came back, full circle. I said that early on, but so often there's not enough exposure to what the potential could be. I also think developing, thinking holistically about developing pipelines within tribes is going to be so important. So, for example, in ag, we've been working with the San Carlos Cattle Ranchers Association. There's such a beautiful opportunity to provide a pipeline of food for their cattle and then selling their cattle directly to the tribe, amongst others. But there's a full, they have the water rights. They have the ability to develop a pipeline of farms to, rather than just looking at the Cattle Ranchers Association, let's look up and downstream to see what other jobs and opportunities. And so I think that a lot of tribes are doing that now. And so I think we need to, link arms and do that as much as we possibly can.
I think I agree with Kimber. And like the tribal colleges are just a treasure. I think they're kind of a hidden treasure. On our agency side, one of the 12 local boards that I mentioned is composed of 13 tribes. So that's an organized effort around how to get workforce development programs going in these different areas. We also have under our agency, we have Greater Arizona Development Authority, which is a public financing infrastructure in terms of helping rural communities and tribal communities. So, and we have a technical assistance program that's basically a grant for $100,000 to help people plan infrastructure, because sometimes you don't have a road, you don't have, there's just so many infrastructure needs in the rural communities. But I think the tribal areas I think the tribes are long-term game in terms of engagement, continuous engagement, and do what you said you're going to go do, right? And so we have to build that trust over many periods of years, and I think there's still a lot of opportunities there.
To add to that, I would say, it's all about starting that conversation. Also, we had a company, one Clue mentioned that, was like, how do we engage with them? Do you have a form or an application? And the answer is no. We have a tribal liaison on staff at the ACA. And so if you have any companies or you'd like to get more involved with them, do reach out to us and we can help connect you to get those conversations started.
Back to your question earlier about policy. One policy I think that we should all examine is, as we know, federal grants, when they existed, they required a match oftentimes. And I would submit that the tribes should be exempt from those matches forevermore, right? Let them pledge their land as a match, and right there, that would be open a door, reduce a barrier. Oftentimes the match is a third of their tribal budget for education, for example, and they're just not going to do that. So I think looking at needs and the realities that they're facing and meeting where they're at is just going to be essential. And the other thing I'll say is access to capital. Tribal members don't own their land where their home is, and so many of us have leveraged our own equity to advance ourselves. Our grandparents might have done this, our parents might have done this to put us through school. If absent that, we have to find other ways to get them access to the capital that they need to grow businesses.
Thank you for that. We have an education related question. Cool, if we could put you on the spot to start this one off. You talked about bringing the colleges in early to make sure that training programs are matching with employer needs and that sort of alignment work, if you will. But given that a smaller percentage of high school students are pursuing post-secondary enrollment, how do we engage folks that may not have traditionally thought colleges for them or some sort of training program?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, all of our training dollars are being paired with support services. We've also implemented outreach and engagement as a requirement as well. So whenever we're seeking funding or we already have funds and we're deploying them, we're making sure that we are engaging and doing outreach to the K-12 community, specifically high schools and CTEDs as well, because we do know, there's limited counselors in the schools. One of the examples is we contracted with the Greater Phoenix Chamber Foundation with Elevate Ed AZ, and they're being deployed in the schools right now, and they have tons of counselors that they've hired to do that outreach and engagement to drive students to our targeted industries in demand.
Any other thoughts from our panel of how we engage young people around training and workforce development?
Yeah, I think one thing, and I see mostly on the construction side, I see a lot of activity with contractors going out and doing construction days. There was like a construction big event a couple weeks ago. Like we have to do a better job of, and this is, I think the industry has recognized this. This is why they're doing this. Is like these are good jobs. These are good paying jobs. These are things that you can get training on. You can get skills on, right? And then you can have a good paying job. So I think we need to do more of that. And to Kimber's earlier point about exposing people to things that they don't think about, like how does your kid make a decision about what they want to do? They probably look at you or family members, like their circle is where they make a decision. So how do we open that up for students that don't have a lawyer in their family or don't have a semiconductor engineer? Like how do we open those things up? And I think that is we were understaffed with at the school level, right? With counselors. So this is an area where I think industry, community colleges, where the community needs to step in and help get some of that information to the students.
So given that we're having some issues in terms of staffing, finding workers, making sure that there's alignment, as there and all the other demographic changes, is there any way to encourage employers to look at different ways of getting the job done? For example, part-time employees, shared jobs, shared positions, any discussions in your sectors around that? Sort of a creative way of approaching how to fill those workforce needs.
So I can't speak to any specific conversations that are currently having, but I do think it's essential that we look at opportunities to find good quality workers in a variety of places where we may not typically look. So youth that may not be college bound, justice impacted individuals, people who may have physical disabilities that don't think of themselves currently as somebody that's going to go to a job every day but would be an excellent employee. I think there's plenty of people out there that don't fit in to the model that we're currently offering as a pathway. And so I think it's on us to create new pathways. I think that's really the heart of your question. I'm just kind of framing it a little differently. I think we just need to be more intentional about how we're doing outreach in our communities. I also think recognizing the important role that immigrants are playing in job creation and where we are as a nation in terms of our population growth and how important it will be that we do have immigrants to fill our future jobs, because we're simply not producing enough people.
Thank you for those comments. As we start wrapping up our time today, I'm going to have one last question that I ask each of our panelists to give an answer to from your own individual perspectives working in this sector. So what is the most important thing that you want to share to this community, the online community, those that are going to be talking about workforce for the next year as we travel around the state, your golden nugget of information or advice that is critical when we think about workforce? I'll let you noodle that over for a few seconds. For those of you, I want to return to this idea of collaboration. So if you're thinking about how to increase collaboration in your own community, to develop some additional conversations and momentum around workforce development, make sure that you remember Town Hall is a partner in this. You can contact us on the website. The QR codes are there, the website, to ask for technical assistance and ask for a facilitated conversation in your own community, because that's where a lot of the answers will come from, right? We've talked about the breadth and depth of and range of needs as we go across Arizona. So how do we make sure that we're having those homegrown conversations to develop homegrown solutions? So remember, Arizona Town Hall. All right, who wants to start us up with your golden nugget that you want to convey around workforce development?
I'll go. I think the secret sauce is knowing what you're good at, like knowing your demographics, knowing what your goal is, and where you want to go. An example that comes to mind is Sierra Vista wants to get into space, and how they've developed that workforce development program with the U of A, and they've landed a few aerospace and defense companies Black Star Orbital announced a major investment into Sierra Vesta. So I think just knowing who you are, the people that live in your community are, and where you want to go, I think you'll be successful.
Yeah, for us, for me, it's and what we've leaned into is the public-private partnerships. Having education and workforce partners, government, and industry all together at the table or partnering on whatever it is we're doing. We all bring our specific skill sets and resources. Kind of to Jamie's point, knowing what you're good at, staying in your lane when you are partnering. Sometimes we'll see organizations trying to do too much. So just staying focused, coming in with the skills and the resources that you have, coming in as a true partner and letting your other partners also contribute. I think we found that to be the most successful and the quickest way to get things done.
I'll add that to the bumper sticker line. So we're going to park the ego, park the logo, and stay in your line.
I'll just I'm going to name partnerships, and really at the core of that is reminding our educators and those trying to create jobs in remote areas that you're not alone, that partnerships are critical. And I'm thinking of a fun example. I partnered with Dr. Jeremy Babandour right over here and Evelyn Kasuga in a small town to do Science Happens Here years ago. And the schools were saying, the small businesses aren't really supportive. And yet when we went to the small businesses with this idea, every one of them said, we'd love to help the schools. And so building those bridges, the idea was we created trading cards that the kids collected to learn how to do science experiments, but they collected them in the business. So, the science of hair dye in the salon and the science of lubricants in the auto repair shop. And so the kids are learning about it and they win a pizza party, something as simple as that. But it brought the community together to teach and to own the fact that it does take a village to raise these kids. And so if you're out there and you're feeling like this is just a massive undertaking, remember that there are partners in unlikely places at every turn.
It's great. I think I agree with with everyone here. The one thing I think is like we have to place the employer. It starts with the employer, what they need, and then ends with the employer in terms of getting the worker that they need. And so we need to understand what employers want. And that's a little bit of a moving target in some cases, but I think you have to put a strategy around that because otherwise it's, the person comes out, there's no job because the employer doesn't recognize something. So it all starts and ends with an employer. And I just want to echo, on the other side, on the partnerships is how do we make the pathways for the students, frictionless, right? Let them have a path that gets them to a career. It's like a Disney ride where you have the mess in the back and the people, we manage all the mess in the back so that the student doesn't have to deal or the businesses don't have to deal with that. They just have the experience and the certainty of what comes out of that program. And there's a lot of people here that know how to connect the different little pathways and the personal relationship that it takes to get very complicated things done when you collaborate with people. But it has to begin and end with the employer being in the middle of the conversation.
Great. How about we give a big thank you to our panel today for sharing their wisdom with us. So sticking with the theme of collaboration and partnership, we wanted to reserve some time to have those conversations and allow people to meet face to face. So I'm going to turn it back over to Greg. Thank you all.
Thank you, Deanna, for moderating that. I thought that panel discussion would be good, and panelists did not disappoint. Thank you, Carlos, Kimber, Kolu, Jami. Great job, great information. Always appreciate learning something new, and I learned a lot today. And I want to give thanks to our sponsors again. We couldn't do a lot of what we do without partnering with sponsors, and Again, we're always looking for more, and sponsors could be as simple as, I have a group and we want to have a community town hall, and what can we do to make that happen? Or it could be, we want to sponsor your whole year's worth of community town halls. I mean, we're open to almost anything that makes sense for you and makes sense for us. The For those online, they probably already know this. We've been recording this today, and for you in the room, just for your information, it has been recorded. We will publish it on the Arizona Town Hall YouTube channel. So if you heard something and want to go back and listen again, or if you want to share with friends, family, or anybody else, please do so. Finally, as Deanna mentioned, we wanted to save just a little bit of time for those of you who are here in person to collaborate, network, talk to one another. And so please, if you don't need to run out of here immediately, feel free to stay. And thanks to Maricopa Community Colleges, there is a hallway behind me here that runs from that door to that door, and there's food out there and drinks, chips, salsa, hummus, pita, taquitos, meatballs. I went, looked, it smelled good, and it looks good. So please, I encourage you to stay for a little while or as long as you can, and encourage you to sample the food and the drinks that are out there. One last thing, for those of you that are here, for those of you online, please email anytime with anything. For those who are here, there's a long green card here on your tables. And the purpose is multi-fold, I guess. If you are interested in hosting a community town hall, or want town hall to help you with any leadership training or an event unrelated to building Arizona's workforce, we're pretty much open to almost anything. Please feel free to take one of these, fill it out. There's also a spot on the bottom for comments on this program and comments on town hall generally. And it's kind of a small spot, but there's a big back with a lot of space to write if you want to use it. So we encourage you, give us your feedback. We appreciate it, and let us know what we can do to help. So I think that's it. Thank you. We are adjourned.